First time joining or the second one, if you joined our first event a couple months back, welcome to the Nonprofit Hug. Ooh, looks like we jumped one a bit already, but that's all good. So topic of the day, yeah, we want to look at Giving Tuesday campaigns, what all goes into preparing for it, maximizing your Giving Tuesday campaign, how you go about setting up your game plan, essentially, and what are all the building blocks that go into it. So for folks who may not yet be part of the hub or might be only have just joined, we did also recently launch our Slack community. So if you haven't joined it, you can scan here. Please have a look. That's definitely the place we want to have be our go-to for any kind of follow-up discussions, share ideas, share practical tips and tricks, right? That's where we can really get into the nitty-gritty of it all, and have some fun. So we'll share the QR code again at the end, but if you haven't yet, join in and we can continue the conversation there. So with that said, we can go on to the next one. Stepan, let's introduce ourselves for the folks who may not know us. You want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. So, hi everyone. I'm Stepan. I'm based from Croatia, and you may see me on your LinkedIn feeds because I'm very active there, or in the HubSpot community, especially the HubSpot nonprofit community. We can also connect there. So, if you have any questions, just let me know. And this topic is very dear to my heart because I brought Giving Tuesday to Croatia like 10 years ago, did a rollout event and collaborated with the main organization in US and then a lot of leaders across the world. So hope this webinar helps you build your campaigns and increase your donations and impact during the Giving Tuesday. So one fact about me, I'm dad to two kids. So yeah, could be tired, but I'm not because I'm excited for this one. So over to you, Martin.
Perfect. Yeah. So hi guys, I'm Martin. That's how you pronounce the name. Don't bother the last name. I'm from Belgium. I'm based in Dubai. Stepan and I, we both work at the nonprofit tech shop, and where Stepan is more on the enablement side of the business, I'm more on the marketing operations side of things. So we work with a lot of nonprofits doing exactly this, developing campaign plans, setting up building blocks for campaign success. And yeah, my focus is a lot on the marketing and the marketing operations side of things. No kids yet on my side, but who knows, maybe in the future. So yeah, let's get right into it. So what we want to talk about today, maximizing Giving Tuesday for your nonprofit. We'll essentially divide it in three blocks, right? The first one, sort of our foundations, right, which we'll want to talk about exactly that, data foundations, so the type of data that's important to collect cleanly, format it correctly, manipulate data, right? Once you have information coming in, what exactly that would look like, what features are that you could use, essentially just getting your data foundation set up. Why? Because the next step relies very heavily on that. The next step being setting up your CRM and your processes, right? So this is where you're actually setting your donation flows up and you're building out your different segments that will all go into automated flows. None of that can effectively happen if your data foundations aren't set up correctly. So that's where we'll go next. And like, okay, how do you now actually utilize that data? And this is where Stepan will take over for what I would say is the fun part, really the full-on demo side of things to show. In this example, we'll show a donation process, how you integrate this with HubSpot, how that data comes in, how that would move donations around in your CRM, really seeing it all in action. And then to finish that up with what we call our Giving Tuesday game plan, right? So just putting that all into a general calendar format. What do you do first? What do you do second, right? How do you go about this? So that is our general outline, general approach to this. And so we can kick things off with data foundations, right? So what is all understood here is not just the actual data blocks or properties, but I also want to take some time just to focus on the actual mapping of your journeys, right? Like how exactly should your flow look like before you can then start determining what is essential data for me, right? Then going into what are some of these essential properties you want to have set up in HubSpot. A lot of them are default, and it's more about just making sure the formatting is right and they're cleaned up. You don't have duplicate properties going around. HubSpot rolled out some very cool features and tools that those who attended inbound may already be aware of those. We'll also look at calculated properties. So those are kind of one step further, taking those clean essential properties and manipulating them in ways that make sense for you. Smart properties, that's a personal favorite of mine, especially post inbound. Been playing around with these quite a bit. There are some very cool things you can do there. And then we'll also just want to touch on objects, specifically deal and custom objects when it comes to donations, right? How do you actually set this up in HubSpot? What are the pros and cons of each? And your lead scoring, right? So again, this is all built on the basis of having your clean data to start with. So if we start with the journey mapping side of things, why this matters, we want to be able to, not everyone is a visual learner, a lot of people are, you want to visualize your flow before you start determining the actual data points that you need. It can be a bit of a Wild West before you know it, where you're essentially just getting input from teams all over the place. Oh, we need to collect this. We need this. Oh, we need information. We need contact information because we want to text them if they did X, Y, Z. When these things come in at random and people start building out smaller automations in and of by themselves, things get messy real quick. I know both Stefan and I are often looped into projects where that is the case, right? Where you just sort of start building on top of things without having one clear master plan. So this is where we would always recommend starting with a very clear visual representation of what your donor flow, your donor journey rather, looks like. We'll typically use tools like a Lucid or a Miro. Anything can be used there really. But two things are important. One is you include all these core elements, right? So what are the different contact or donor or supporter types within your organization? Within those, what are some of the segments, right? So, hey, we'll have donors, but we'll have subscription donors and one-time donors, right? Having those different categories laid out. What are then the touch points, right? And then when we say touch points, we don't just want to focus on the donation process, but pre-donation, post-donation, right? What are touch points that potential donors would interact with, right? Oh, they will interact with blogs, we'll send emails, we'll have ads running, whatever it may be. Having all of those per segment defined. And then the messaging, what should each touch points be bringing over to these contacts, as well as in the channels that you'd use for that. So if you start with those categories and make sure they're all included, you'll see you already have quite a lot that you'll want to start puzzling together. And then you would just shuffle that around until you have your a journey that makes sense for your organization. That'll then inform, okay, in order to effectively run this, what are the data points that I'm going to be needing in my CRM to make sure I can do all the things that I've visualized here. So that the first one is getting all that information in there. The second one, keeping it up to date. I think that's perhaps the less fun part and one that gets often overlooked. But when changes do happen, go in, update it, right? Saying, hey, actually, there's a new campaign that we're collecting donations for. Okay, add that individual, right? Make sure that it's clear there so anyone can come in at any time and have a solid understanding of what different journeys would look like. So before even getting into the properties, make sure you just have your visualization set. Lucid Miro is what we typically use. If you have any other suggestions on tools that you use, please do share. These have just essentially been some of our go-tos. So if we go to the next, once we have our journey generally mapped, we know how we want to interact with folks, we can then identify the properties we need. The first group here of essential properties would largely be the same for most organizations. Again, there's some variations there, but this is basically everything that is your donor information, right? Email, phone, address, life cycle stages. All of that is pretty standard. Where it often gets a little muddy is if the formatting is incorrect. And all of a sudden there's 2 or 3 address fields. One gets used in one form, one gets used in the other. Make sure you have those removed and merged. We'll touch on some of the tools that you can use for that later, including the property insights feature in HubSpot for those who may have not used that one yet, which helps identify those kind of properties. Like, hey, these two look oddly similar. Should that be one same property? That's what you want to make sure does not happen with those essential data pieces. The next ones are more engagement data. So engagement data, again, email opens, visits, this is all automatically tracked. Just make sure, is your HubSpot tracking code set up across all your websites and landing pages, right? Are all of your emails set up correctly? Again, this is pretty default there. You just want to make sure that it's in place. Where it gets a bit more custom is things like volunteer data and donation data, right? So if you are running volunteer events that folks can sign up for, have that set up in a way that makes sense for your organization. We often see custom objects, right? Volunteer events we think could be associated with contacts. They could also just be properties that live on a contact record, right? Where it's a drop-down option of volunteer events that people have signed up for. As well as then donation data. So we'll go a bit more into that one specifically, but obviously you want to have one clean, solid place where donation amounts, donation frequencies, payment methods are coming in. Usually this is on a deal object that we associate with a contact. You can also use custom objects. We'll get into that shortly. One thing just to call out here is that when we're looking at essential properties, you'd want to look at both what we would call donor and supporter activity. Zooming out, what that really means is don't just collect the, let's say the conversion information, donation information, but track as much of the activity and that donors and potential donors are doing as well. Again, if you're doing volunteer events, great, but also just on your website, what blogs are they reading? Make sure that's captured and stored in a property somewhere, so you have a full view of your donors, not just what they actually ended up donating, right? So moving through to, Esteban, if you go to the next one, yeah. So calculated properties, that essentially goes, as the name suggests, builds on the essential property. So why this matters is this gives you more nuanced views on the data that you're collecting. So some examples, and we just kind of go through this. Lifetime giving value, right? So setting up a calculated property that takes the sum of all donation amounts. So let's say the sum of all deal amounts that are associated to a contact and putting that into a contact property. Great. That gives you their lifetime given value. Average gift size, similar. You'll take the amount of donations divided by the total amount divided by the number of donations, have that in a view as well. Donation frequency, right? So how many donations per time period? Again, if that makes sense for your organization. Days since last donation, where you take today's date minus the date of the last closed one deal, for example, if a deal is a donation. This is where you want, again, you revert back to your initial mapping and journey, see what properties you need, and get those set up. One trap here that I think sometimes you fall into is, and that I fall into myself as well, if you like playing around with calculated properties, you can really go down a rabbit hole real quick and start over calculating everything. So try to stick to what it is that you need and that you're actually going to be using in your donor journeys. Try to leave out what you don't need. If donation frequency is not really relevant, maybe leave it out just in case it gets confused with another property you may have set up. So just a general call out there. Then if we move to the next one, Stepan, so on smart properties, fairly new, very cool, some limitations. What's great here is it goes one step further than calculated properties in that it can use prompts to analyze and categorize data, and the output can be a property, which is great. So if you're collecting text field properties and you want to convert this into a standardized drop down select output, this is where smart properties would come in exactly, right? They could analyze what's in there, put it into categories that make sense for you. So this is great. There's a ton of use cases here. And one thing to really open up, I would say that book of possibilities here is the current limitation that some of you who play around with it may have already bumped into is if you want to feed it multiple bits of information when setting up one of these smart properties, you'll have to link it to a specific property. So how do you get multiple pieces of information if I can only provide one property as input? This is where a common workaround that we've been using recently is creating these roll-up or wrap-up properties, where we're essentially creating a workflow that pushes a ton of information into one messy side property, right? It takes all the donations amounts, donation campaign, donation source, puts this all into one wrap-up property. This property itself would not actually be used by anyone directly, so the formatting is not crucial. But then that is the property that you feed into the data agent and say, hey, based on this, give me a profile of this donor, right? And so one example here is the one I put there below, pushing the different donation dates and amounts into one property. The data agent analyzes it, and the output could be, hey, Martin is someone who typically donates in the summertime, and his donation method is always online and not in person. Okay, great. And so that's taken several properties that were associated to my record and putting it into one AI analyzed property there. So fun one to play around with. It opens a ton of doors once you kind of start playing around with this workaround. But it's an interesting interesting weapon to have in your arsenal, really, when you're setting up your properties. Last one here on sort of on the contact side of things, the lead scoring. So this is one that I think is often underutilized simply because it's typically used in more of a for-profit context, right, where you're scoring folks towards a conversion goal, which we're typically doing with donation campaigns as well, right? What you want to do here, and why it matters to have your lead scoring set up in the first place, is it'll help you segment your donors without needing to use individual property filters all of the time, right? If you have a clear idea of what 3-4 different segments would look like, and there's multiple factors that play into it, like donation amounts and frequencies, et cetera, a lead scoring system is probably going to be a much cleaner way to get your supporters or to get your donors into these groups. And so the way we go about setting these up, these lead scoring models, because that can be a bit of a daunting task once you just go into it unstructured. You first want to break down what the scoring groups are. So what are different elements that you value in a donor or a potential donor, right? So this could be a general website activity, ad activity, blog activity if they're signing up for events, and then actual donations, for example, as well. So setting up those groups. Then within each group, that's where you would then define the individual triggers, right? So hey, within donations, do we have different types of donations that we'd want to score differently? We'd probably want to have a different score for larger donations versus smaller ones, right? So that's where you, within those group, start creating those nuances. What you would then do, and again, usually we would do all of this still outside of HubSpot, just jotting everything down and leveraging AI, leveraging a ChatGPT, as simple as that, of putting this into a framework that makes sense, right? If you have a general idea of what value you want to attribute to different scoring groups, for me, it is much more telling if someone interacts with blogs than it would be if they interact with specific website pages. Okay, great. Then feed that information into an AI model to just help you get some weighted averages that make sense for you. And then once you have this set up, you've scored your individual groups and your individual actions within those groups. Run several tests, right? This doesn't hurt anything, as long as you don't have your lead scoring set up yet to into any other automations. You can go ahead and play around with that and get a view of, hey, if I push this live, where do my current supporters, my current donors fall into this grid? The last thing I would just add on the lead scoring side of things is you can use more than one lead scoring model, and more often than not, it actually makes a lot more sense to use more than one scoring model, meaning you're scoring different types of people in your organization depending on exactly what they are. Are they a potential donor? You'll probably want to score them towards their donation potential. That would be primarily focused on activity that they're showing, topics of interest that you've collected based on blogs that they've interacted with, etc., versus existing recurring subscription-based donors, for example, where you'd want to have a scoring model that helps you surface or identify potential churn risks, right? Hey, this is a donor that's been around for 2 years, but there's been less activity in the last 4 months, hasn't interacted with newsletters, hasn't submitted any new petitions, forms, whatever it may be. Use the lead scoring to surface existing donors as potential churn risk. So having more than one lead scoring model can definitely make sense. Wouldn't overdo this right from the beginning, but just something to consider when setting these up. So with that said, going on to the last element of sort of the, and apologies for a lot of text on this one, but we can share some screenshots with this, of this afterwards as well. When it comes to actually collecting donations and how you go about doing that, the question that we often get, that we often run into is, what do we use to actually track donations? Obviously, and the most common response is we have deals in HubSpot, right? And we can use deals to capture donations. We can set up different pipelines. Or does it make more sense to set up a custom object? Because technically you're saying, well, this isn't a deal, it's a donation, right? So would it make more sense to set up a separate object in and of itself and use that to start associating donations with contacts? The response, I would say, in 80% of the time is going to be using deals. The reason for it is you get a lot of benefits in the sense that you have a lot of native reporting that is just directly there. It does give you enough flexibility, like I mentioned earlier, where you can create different pipelines, meaning you can have different donation campaigns, essentially, by creating these different pipelines. Typically, that is enough flexibility needed there. And perhaps most importantly, the one that we bump into the most is if you're integrating HubSpot with any other tools related to your donations, like Stepan will show shortly, for example. A lot of the native integrations make that assumption that deals are donations, essentially. And so if you want to leverage a lot of these native integrations, having your donations be deals will help you with that, and that you wouldn't need any kind of custom integration work, because that information needs to come to this custom object and not a deal object. You can just rely on it. So that can be a big time saver. The only downside of it is that if you do go ahead with a custom object, you would have even more flexibility, right? You could essentially morph that that object to exactly the type of donations that make sense for you. Cases in which we've used that is if deals are used for more than donations alone, and we've seen that, right, where we have grants coming in, we have donations coming in. All of this are deals, and things can get a little muddy real quick if we're all storing that on the same object in different pipelines, or if there's a ton of different donation types that go around in your organization, right? Then it might make sense to say, hey, we don't have enough flexibility just setting up different pipelines for every donation type. We want a custom object where we can play around a lot more with the association levels, the properties we add, et cetera. But general takeaway, and again, I would say 85% of the time, we go with deals as donations, and that gives you enough flexibility to work with, and the added advantage of having all of your integrations be natively working for you. So just something to keep in mind there. Cool. So with that said, we got a lot of what I would say a bit of the boring theory out of the way. Stepan is going to take it over from here and show you some of this in practice, like how you would actually now go about setting up some of these processes within HubSpot, having your data foundations in place. So Stepan, you want to take it away from here?
Yeah. So first off, before I start, you can use the Q&A section to maybe add any of your questions. So we will be monitoring that, and hopefully we can answer most of them today. If not, we will be noting them down and we can answer later. You can always reach us on LinkedIn. But let's jump into the second part of this, and it's the CRM customization for your campaign efficiency. So first off, I would like to start with just put in the chat, have you ever run a Giving Tuesday campaign using spreadsheets? So maybe just say yes or no, so we get some understanding if you run it using spreadsheets or not. So Felix says not yet. Anybody else? Or maybe you didn't use a CRM to leverage your campaigns. Doesn't need to be Giving Tuesday specific. Maybe it's something else. Just let us know. We are very interested in that. Yeah, Martin did. So, okay, so here's the reality. So Giving Tuesday isn't just any fundraising day. It's a 24-hour sprint where every minute counts. And organizations that thrive aren't just the ones with the best stories or even the biggest email list that I'm hearing. They're the ones that have systematically eliminated friction from their fundraising process. So you can see here that most nonprofits approach Giving Tuesday like prepping for a little family dinner, and then when the Giving Tuesday madness hits, you are trying to serve at the wedding reception. So this volume breaks your system, it overwhelms your teams, and also creates chaos right when you need precision and everybody to be aligned. Our research using Perplexity and ChatGPT Deep shows that 95% of nonprofits use spreadsheets during major campaigns. And I would say that 90% of them regret it. And average nonprofit loses 23% of donor data during the high value campaigns because the donor data is stored in a spreadsheet, it's stored in the notebooks, and that means that you're losing money at the table, but you're also using great connections and maybe new potential donors. Names get misspelled, emails bounce, follow-ups get delayed. So this is not just an operational failure. This is something that is then replicated on the second campaign that you're doing, your fundraising. So organizations that are crushing their goals, and we are talking about 150 to 300 volume increase without adding any staff count, they figured one key principle. So configure once, scale forever. So Martin talked about the data, and I will be talking about how to use that data and how to make sure that you configure it correctly. So the customization strategy that I'll be covering breaks down into two critical areas where you will see immediate return on investment. First is donor efficiency. And you need to ask the question how to use your CRM to convert more people that want to be part of your organization and retain more donors. And secondly, team efficiency, how you can help your team be more efficient and what does that mean. So let's dive into how you can implement both strategy in your next campaigns, and then I will go and demo everything that we have created to achieve that. So first, donor efficiency. So we would like to think about donor efficiency as how can you use your platform, a HubSpot CRM, to create more meaningful connections that drive results. So first off, it's how do you collect the donations? So what we like to propose is using Fundraise Up integration, and this is what we will cover today. Because it's a game changer, because it natively integrates with HubSpot. So this isn't just about collecting donations, it's about having every interaction, every gift, every donation, every email click, sending directly into your CRM. So there's no more manual data entry, no more misspelled names or missed follow-ups, and eventually no more lost donor information. Next up is powering and using AI-powered insights. So what's really helpful is Fundraise Up has a built-in AI that can analyze the whole Fundraise Up platform with HubSpot platform and identify the donor types and their patterns. So it will flag donors who are ready for an upgrade ask, and it will ask that upgrade when they are donating. I will show you that in, I would say, 5 minutes, or highlight major donor gift prospects you might have missed. So during Giving Tuesday fast pace, this automation is crucial. You can then also use personalization at scale, and this is where HubSpot helps you. With all of this data flowing in, with one just little simple integration, you can truly create personalized experience. So for example, someone who gave $25 last year will get different messaging than your $500 donor. So HubSpot Smart content that we covered in our first webinar can let you customize everything from email subject lines to landing page copy based on their giving history. And then lastly, that Martin covered is building up follow-up. So the moment someone donates, you enroll them in a sequence that, or you send them immediately a receipt, you personalize thank you, or impact story follow-up. So everything is happening without your team lifting a finger. So the next part I want to cover before we jump It's the team efficiency, how to streamline campaign management and collaboration. So first off, using HubSpot, building dashboards, custom campaign dashboards that are basically your mission control. Everyone can see real-time progress towards goals, which team members are hitting their targets. So if you have, for example, volunteers in the field, somebody can easily see, like a volunteer manager can easily see if they are doing enough in the field. If you set it up, so they need to update using a HubSpot mobile app, for example, and where you need to pivot your strategy. So there's no more hunting through spreadsheets or waiting for end of day reports to see if we hit our goals or somebody needed to do some extra work during the Giving Tuesday Madness. Next thing I want to cover are custom views. You will see a couple of them that I created in the demo. So this is where HubSpot really shines. Because, for example, your major gift officer or donor officer can only see donor capable of 1,000 plus donations. Your volunteer coordinator sees a clean list of people who expressed interest in helping. Your social media manager can see donors who are active on LinkedIn for potential peer-to-peer asks. And then HubSpot Smart Automation. So for example, when a 3,000 donation comes in, we automatically create a task for your development director to make a personal call within 12 hours or 24 hours or 6 hours even. So when someone, for example, visits your donation page 3 times, like a landing page that you have specially created for Giving Tuesday, they visit it 3 times, but they don't give, it can alert somebody from your team to try to make a call if they're in your HubSpot. If you have their email, you can also send a marketing email like as a gentle nudge. And then every team member will then follow the same proven process for donor cultivation, acknowledgement, and follow-up. And new staff can also jump in quickly, and nothing will fall through the crack during the busy that is Giving Tuesday. So moving further, I want to show you what does it look like in Fundraise Up in HubSpot. Because if you remember, in our first webinar, or if you are just joining us today, firstly, we promised that all of this that we are doing with you will be tactical, and it will not just be theory. So we covered a bunch of theory, and now we have some time to do the real thing in the systems. So let me quickly just unshare my screen and go into the portal. So here is how Fundraise Up looks. So it's very easy to connect it. The only thing you need to do when you log in, you will click this button, go to settings, and then at the bottom, click integrations, find HubSpot, and connect with your HubSpot platform. Once you do that, you will see this. You will see the account, meaning your HubSpot ID that was connected to. You will see who connected it. For this demo purpose, I connected it with my own account, but we encourage you that you use a shared email like integrations@yourcompany.com or .org, because this will allow you then, if somebody is out of office or they leave the company, so you don't need to do everything if you don't have access to their email. What happens when you integrate the two platforms? It will immediately create a pipeline in your account. So you are saving time because it will create a pipeline, it will create some stages, and it will also surface a pipeline ID, so you can easily use that for any more complex or custom integrations to know which pipeline you're targeting. Then we go here to this tab called General Settings. So first off, you need to make sure that you understand the deal name. So we can change how our donations will come to HubSpot. We can say donation amount from first name. So meaning if I give $100, it will be $100 from Stepan and my surname. We can change that if you have different, that people needs to see that information different. So maybe a campaign name from and then something else. or a donation date. It doesn't matter. You can do what. This is something that we think is a best practice, and I will show you how different that data can come to your HubSpot account. We are then matching this by emails, because HubSpot is also matching by emails, so we don't have any duplicates. For example, if I do 2 donations, it will just associate it to me. So I will have 2 donations in my name. There are no duplications. The subscription type is optional, and basically what subscription type is, you can use HubSpot subscription type that you have already in HubSpot. Fundraise Up will pull it out, and you can which subscription type anybody that donates will be automatically subscribed to. So for example, if you can have a variety of them, make sure that you check out this box. Then you will see pipeline stages. This is already mapped. So success. So if somebody charges their credit card, it goes to this stage in the pipeline. If the donation is pending, it will go here. If they're refunded or failed, it will go in the refund and failed stage. So why is this important, you may ask? Maybe we just need to have donated or failed. But I would say refunded is pretty good stage that Fundraise Up as a platform added, I would say like a year ago, because you can leverage that piece of data. So for example, somebody does a refund, you can easily have the automation in the background with emails saying like, what happened? Is there any other cause that you would like to donate? And maybe somebody also calls that person and maybe chats more. Failed, that doesn't mean they didn't want to donate. So you can also surface that to a view or to somebody that needs to maybe call and say, or send an email and say, and ask, hi, like in an email, just hi, first name, and we saw that you tried to donate for this Giving Tuesday campaign, but can you check if your credit card information is valid or something else? So that way you use all the information that you're gathering once you connect the two. The next thing that you need to do is mapping roles. So Fundraise Up and HubSpot also saves you time here, because everything here grayed out is already mapped. And those are custom native properties in HubSpot, so don't need to worry that it's not mapped correctly. And then you can see we can add a lot of more data. So we can add, for example, if somebody is a recurring donor, we can add that to their contact and say recurring donor contact. So we can also use that to build lists or active lists where we want to send different messaging to recurring donor or show different things using smart content to recurring donors. One thing that I recommend is to map a campaign code, and map it on the deal level. So we called it the Fundraise Up campaign code. This is a little trick if you want to then use this data to report what campaign is performing the best. So you can do like a little attribution trick here, where anytime somebody donates from the campaign that you create in Fundraise Up, that code goes to the deal, and you have your data collected. Next up that I want to show you here is how easy it is to build a campaign using Fundraise Up. So the only thing they need to do, scroll up and click campaign. Once you do that, you can see I already have my existing campaigns. So I have my pre-Giving Tuesday campaign, I have a VIP donor year campaign, end of year campaign, and then I have my awesome Giving Tuesday campaign. So I just click new campaign, and I can start building my campaign. I can give it a name, I can new campaign with default, or I can maybe clone an existing one and change it completely. I already preloaded this one that I called my Giving Tuesday campaign. And basically what you will need to do, you will need to go, when you click new one, to settings. Give your campaign a name. So you can choose any name. This is where you put the code that we are passing to the deal level. So donation level, if you may call it. So we are just adding 225 GT. And then you select your campaign formats. So do we want to use a checkout model? That is like an overlay on your website. We can just send it wherever we want on a website. We enable the model if the campaign will be used to collect donations on the organization site. or we want to also do a campaign page, or one or the other. Campaign page means that we will build a donation page with integrated checkout form. We will enable the campaign page in this campaign, and it will receive traffic from external sources, such as marketing communications. So you can easily build an email, use the link for when you build a campaign page, and then people click there, and you have another landing page. You can set up the campaign URL, and because Giving Tuesday ends, I think December 2nd, I just put here that this will end at December 3rd, so nobody needs to do that manually. You can leave this blank if you need to. Okay, moving further, set up your payment options. So this is a money-based payment option. It's not a crypto. And you can set up currencies that you would like to receive your donations of. And then this is the fun part, the suggested amounts. So once you're building your modules, you want to build a one-time or a monthly module. And we can enable impact descriptions, meaning we can say, okay, you're giving $50 to support our core operations. You're giving $250 to help fund an awareness campaign, core operations, and more. You can add any amounts here, and you can set up default one-time suggested amount. And this is what I was talking about AI. So when enabled, Fundraise Up will analyze supporters' behavior and suggest the most convenient donation amount for each individual. This will help you maximize the donations coming in. Then you can do the same for monthly, and then you can do the same for minimum amounts. You can even do transaction costs, so it covers the costs. And then there's a couple of things that we will not cover here, like tribute, designations, employer matching, and more. So once you're good with that, click Save Changes and go to Checkout Module. Once you go to Checkout Module, just go and say add a logo, add a media. You can even do videos here because it's very easy to do a video and maybe make it more personal, make a page title, maybe a little message, and you can add 3 links. So you can add a call now. When they see that, you can add contact us, maybe use your email or whatever. So this is my email. So if you want to talk more about nonprofit stuff, Fundraise Up or HubSpot, you have my email. Okay, and then we go to campaign page where you can set up your whole campaign page if you want to do that as in external marketing email as an external landing page. Okay, so we covered a lot. This is how easy it is. You just go through the tabs, see what's available, and make sure that you save it. But then let's go and see how this campaign that we just built, I would say in less than 5 minutes or 6, looks. So I already preloaded it, so you don't need to wait. And I will just reload this quickly. Okay. So once somebody lands on my page, as you can see, a little title, a little logo, couple of like sentences, and you can see we can enable the recent donations. As you can see, I did a lot of donations. I love to support Giving Tuesday movements. So what I can do, anybody that's an end user will see this. They can just select give once, 25, 50, 250, or maybe other amounts. So if I want to do more, I can do, let's say, 345. I can also select monthly. If I select monthly, I have this little animation that's pretty fun, and then my suggested amounts for somebody being a recurring donor can be this. So if I do give once, I click 345, I click donate. I just need to populate. We are asking that the donor, last name and email address. We're just adding this. We can add more custom fields if we need to. We click continue. And then because this is a test, we enable the cover transaction costs if we want to. We are asking for credit card, and because this is just a test, so it's not my real credit card number. And we are doing this. I click donate. And as you can see, it's pretty fast, and AI is leveraging $70 a month to become a monthly supporter Probably because I already donated a couple of amounts, so they're going with something average or less below the average. So this is where AI can help you increase your donation volume. So, and also like a little message, would you like to become a monthly supporter starting from next month? Yes, I will give you monthly or not to this, or I can select another amount, maybe 60, that I'm comfortable to do. So not at this time, and it will then ask me to share if I want to share that I donated. So this is how easy it is and how the module will be reflected as a page or a checkout module. But let's dive into HubSpot. How does that now looks in HubSpot? So if we go here and I go to my custom view here, Giving Tuesday donation, so you can see that it's already here. So it's 345 from my name, and I marked as a tier 1 donor, and because I use the campaign code, I'm also surfacing this too, that's called a tag, where we can surface this visual to anybody from your team. So they can identify that in this Fundraise Up donation pipeline, we have different donations, but this one is from Giving Tuesday. That helps a lot for your team to be efficient. And this is my second step here, helping your team to be more efficient. As you can see here, we have a pending donation from the Egan family. There's some failed donation. There's successful donations and refunds. So how do we get this? This is just using any piece of data that Martin covered. So for example, if somebody donated $1,000 one time, and they maybe are reading our blogs, and they're also chatting or they're attending our webinars, we will mark them as tier 1 donor as their life cycle. Then we use that data to build this tag. So it's pretty simple. What else I can do here? I have built a couple of custom views for my team. So I have a major gift officer that only wants to see a 10K donation. So if I click 10K plus, I'm just surfacing anybody that donated more than $10,000. So as you can see here, there's 10,400. If I go to less than 100, maybe for somebody that's just like doing a little marketing emails based on that data, we can see that there are 2 donations that are less than $100. Okay, so we are helping our team be more smarter, see what they need to see. We can also do a range like 5 to 10, meaning more than 5, less than 10, but you get the point here. And then what else? Because somebody donated, there will be a contact in our CRM. And then based off any score that Martin covered, any data, any interaction that HubSpot is collecting, web clicks, email opens, anything, we can set up something that we like to do here at Nonprofit Tech Shop is donor warmth meter. And we leverage all of this data, even a lifecycle stage or their statuses and their engagement, and we set up something that's called if they're cold donor or a warm donor. So for example, this can be great help for the teams. For example, we see that this Steve has warm meter here. He was active. He's a tier 1 donor. So maybe somebody needs him, and probably with a little nudge, he will donate on Giving Tuesday, or maybe become a monthly supporter, or maybe increase his donation. You can see the same here, for example, for Amanda. She is gold, marked as a warmth meter based on all the criteria we set. She's also a tier 1 donor, but she's an active donor. So probably we need to enroll Amanda into some kind of nurture campaign or journey, donor journey, and maybe get her back. So we can do that also. So you get the point here, but like that's how we can leverage if we have clear data foundations that we can leverage. But we don't stop there. As I said, we are covering more what you can do in HubSpot. So I'm just going to the reports dashboard. So you can see build based on all the data we're collecting. We are building up to date, like just like 1 minute delay for HubSpot to review data and have a dashboard. So we have our average donation amounts. We have average donation amount by donor types and tiers that we have. We have the pipeline from the average gift amounts from the 2024, total of donors by type, average of gifts per donor by donor types. So it's an individual or by company. How many churned from 2024? So maybe somebody clicks here and they start interacting with, like we are doing another Giving Tuesday campaign. I know you donated last year. Let's get you to donate this year. Quarterly donation volumes and a lot more. So you see everything is possible if you have built that foundation. Then you can do and achieve donation efficiency and your team efficiency. So just stopping here, going back to our slideshow, and I have a couple of last words, and then I'll kick it off to Martin. Here, just a second. So as you can see, we are achieving that with a couple of things, with data and with our purpose to use the data correctly. And what I would like to just say is that this is what efficiency looks like. Your donor will get an amazing experience, your data stays clean and actionable, and your team can focus on what they do best, building relationship and long-term support. So we cover data essentials, CRM essentials. I take it to Martin to cover the Giving Tuesday action plan. So go ahead, Martin.
Yeah. No, awesome. Yeah. So I'll just kind of wrap us up here and putting everything in a timeline format. But I think to essentially what Stepan was showing here, you see how easy it can be. You have to build these things, and information comes in, and it looks so clean. The reason we put the data hygiene section before that is because it's very reliant on that, right? We can't get these tier one tags and warmth meters correctly functioning just by getting Fundraise Up donations coming in. We need to make sure that we have the right properties in HubSpot to capture all that, smart properties to detect the warmth of a donor, etc. So, but it does give you a cool idea of, hey, once your data foundation is set, there's so many things that you can quickly and easily build on top of it. And Fundraise Up, it's one of the best ones out there. I saw Laura called it out in the chat as well, that you all use it and integrated with HubSpot. Yeah, we only hear good things, and in the projects we work on as well, it's quite good. So to wrap us up, I won't take too much time. I just want to put everything somewhat in a timeline view, right? And then we'll send this out. We're preparing this in more of a one-pager checklist game plan document as well that we can send over to you all. And we can also just follow it up more in the Slack channel later as well. But so to summarize this, 3 main kind of categories, I guess, when you're going through your Giving Tuesday game plan. Your 6 to 8 weeks before, again, these are kind of arbitrary, but this depends. But essentially, well in advance of your campaign, you want to get your data hygiene side of things set up, your segments defined, and setting up your HubSpot campaigns. 3 to 4 weeks before, that's when you'll probably already start pushing out your Giving Tuesday content to some degree, making sure that this is all linked to the right campaigns. Your nurture flows will start firing, and you want to have your Giving Tuesday week, Giving Tuesday day social strategy and game plan and notifications set up as well. And then the week of or the day of Giving Tuesday, that's all about real-time notifications, information flying around, social media teams knowing where to action everything out. So quickly going through that, Stepan, if you can go through here, I just want to call this one out. Set up your campaigns, do it from the start, so much cleaner, right? So if you have your Giving Tuesday, go to your HubSpot campaigns, set it up there, and already start plugging in assets as you're creating them, right? If you're building out new landing pages, new email series, etc., if you have your campaign there, you always have your little HubSpot drop down, associate to campaign, make sure you're not overlooking anything, and get everything plugged in there immediately. Don't miss out on call to actions buttons, right? It's a typical one, sometimes gets overlooked, not added to a campaign. Make sure you're adding everything in there, because for those who may already use it, right? You know how much native reporting goes in, you get out of these campaigns in HubSpot, right? Where it's just influence, contact, etc. There's a lot there, but you need your information in there. And using the campaign calendar to schedule a lot of tasks and posts related to your campaign, very useful as well if your team is using HubSpot correctly. If you go through one more, Stefan, so another one in terms of preparation, I'm not going to hammer on this too much, hammered on that a lot in the first section, but the data hygiene side of things. A couple tools just to call out and things to use. So the HubSpot data quality features, they're quite good. Don't overly rely on them. Don't just auto merge and everything right away. Have a look at it, I would say, but it has gotten quite good, in my opinion, especially the property insights one, where essentially it calls out if there are potentially overlapping properties. That's something that happens quite often, especially if multiple people have been in your portal over years, right? Different properties get created. Some of them might be linked in one form, some in the other. Property Insights is pretty good at identifying those and getting those out. This is something you want to do this pre-campaign, but also just try and do this regularly. I would say usually quarterly. You'd have a proper data hygiene audit. 3-4 weeks before, so this is where things are heating up. You're getting your first assets and nurture flows out, making sure they're all linked to the campaigns. Setting up A/B test variations, right? Always best practice. And when you're setting up any kind of campaign, start building out the actual workflows for your nurture campaigns, and perhaps even most importantly, use smart content, right? We've been creating all these nice, beautiful segments and tiers and lists and calculated properties. You want to use them, right? And so a main way to use them is when you do send out an email, when you do direct folks to a landing page, use smart content. Show different things depending on different people you're reaching out to, right? Tier 1 donors who are warm and active should get a different messaging than perhaps lapsed donors that you haven't heard from in a while, right? Maybe they need a little bit more information on the cause they could be supporting, right? And less directly call to action heavy. So make those distinctions and use that smart content to actually use the list that you've been creating. The social strategy, yeah. So actually, you can go back just one, Stefan. So the social strategy side of things, again, use AI features that are there. They do help. About a year ago, I wouldn't suggest it as much. Right now, it's gotten a lot better. So we have the social post agent. It can help you generate social post IDs. It's gotten quite good where you can plug it into specific events you want it to tailor around. Obviously, plug in your brand voice so it follows the guidelines that you're using. And then it'll also help you with scheduling suggestions, like based on engagement and interactions, when you should post what. Then if you go one more step on, so just to wrap things up, week of, day of, what are you looking out for? Social team responsiveness. You want to be on the ball here, right? Set up your social media inbox in HubSpot, so all your media accounts, all your social media accounts, messages are coming in there, and you have someone who's dedicated following this up, right? Who can then, again, work across multiple platforms through HubSpot. Comments, direct messages, everything can come in there. Using the social post agent, again, to help respond. A cool tip here to call out, and this is one that's not everybody use. In your settings in HubSpot, there is a customer conversation data that you essentially need to enable, so allow AI to access it. That'll open up features like suggested responses, etc. These are not super generic. They really play into your brand voice, the content of the message. They're quite good. So again, it's a good assistant tool to have. In order for it to work properly, you do need to allow it to access conversation data. So we'll wrap all this up. We kind of covered the monitoring alerts. We'll wrap all this up. We'll send over a one-pager as well. We're working on putting this into a game plan. Again, scan the QR code if you haven't already. I've seen some notifications pop up. I think a couple of you joined the Slack group. That's awesome to see. For those who haven't, feel free to scan it here and have a look. And yeah, we look forward to continuing the conversation there, getting some ideas and topics from everyone in the hub, really, for upcoming events and things that we want to discuss and dive into more. And specifically when it comes to our Giving Tuesday and campaign preparation, yeah, let's follow up the conversation there. I know we're kind of at time, so we don't have too much time for any kind of Q&A here today, but that's fine. We got a Slack hub. We can chat there. So we can take the conversation there. Happy to continue chatting with you all there. And yeah, we'll definitely see you at the next event, if not before that, to follow up. Thank you very much, and we'll see you all very soon.
Thank
Bye,
you,
guys.
everyone. Bye-bye.